Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 regular City Council meeting of June 14th, 2023. Welcome to all of you. It's good to see so many people here. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Arias.
Here.
Councilmember Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
I am here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray. Here. And Councilmember Kaur.
Here. Thank you. And at this time, we have the pleasure of having Gyani Gurcharan Singh, who's the founding member of the Bakersfield Sikh Punjabi Senior Citizens Association, to offer the invocation. It's been a pleasure to just see the group provide resources to our Sikh community. And thank you so much for all of your service and for your advocacy for our seniors and elderly rights. And then following the invocation, we have the pleasure of having Micah Eldridge, who's a 7th grader at Walter Stern Middle School, who will lead us in the pledge. He was named the 2023 Boys and Girls Club of Kern County Ford Junior Youth of the Year. Micah earned the honor by being an overcomer, consistently attending school and doing his homework, and being the first to assist activity leaders. He has a 4.0 GPA, active member of the Engineering Club, Robotics Club, Chess Club, and Student Government. And so now, Mr. Singh, please come and offer the prayer. Would you all please stand?
My name is Gyani Gurcharan Singh. I represent the Punjabi Sikh Senior Citizen Association. Today I will be performing traditional Sikh prayer, Ardas. एक ओंकार वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। श्री भगवती जी सहाय वार भगवती जी की पातशाही 10वीं प्रथम भगवती समर कै गुरु नानक ਲਈ ਧਿਆਏ। फिर गुरु अंगद गुरु अमरदास रामदास होई सहाय। अर्जन हर गोबिंद नो सिमरो श्री हर राय। श्री हर कृष्ण ध्याईया इठे सब दुख जाए। तेग बहादुर सिमरिए घर नौन दयावै धाए। सब थाई होए साय। 10वें पातशाह गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी महाराज सब थाई होए साय। 10वां पातशाही जोत श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी के पाठ दर्शनदार दा ध्यान धर बोलना जी वाहिगुरु। हे नमानियों के नमान, तानियों के तान, नहीं ओटियों की ओठ, नहीं आसरों के आसरे। गुरु नानक देव, गुरु गोबिंद सिंह, गुरु ग्रंथ साहब महाराज जीओ। ਅੱਜ ਬੇਕਰਫੀਲਡ ਸਿਟੀ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਦੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਬੇਕਰਫੀਲਡ ਦੀ ਸਿਟੀ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਨੂੰ, ਲੋਕਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਬਖਸ਼ਣੀ, ਮੇਰਾ ਭਰਿਆ ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਹੱਥ ਰੱਖਣਾ, ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਬਖਸ਼ਣੀ। ਬੇਕਰਫੀਲਡ ਨੂੰ, ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਨੂੰ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀਆਂ ਕਲਾ ਬਖਸ਼ਣੀਆਂ। ਸੁਖ ਹੋਵੇ ਨਾਮ ਚਿਤ ਆਵੈ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ, ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ। ਬੋਲੇ ਸੋ ਨਿਹਾਲ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Micah.
ਚਲੋ।
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and you may be seated. Here are a few guidelines to help our meeting run smoothly. We request that you turn off your phones. Please be courteous in the use of cameras and videos, and for safety reasons and as a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the council chambers or in the lobby. Applause is allowed during the presentations portion of the meeting, but not during other portions of the meeting. Everyone in attendance is expected to adhere to the rules of decorum established by resolution of the City Council. Failure to abide by the city rules of decorum, including any disruptive disruptive behavior that interferes with our ability to have an orderly and efficient meeting prevents the City Council from conducting the business of the city. Consider this a first warning to everyone in attendance that conduct that disrupts this meeting may result in expulsion and/or the chambers being cleared. Behavior that disrupts the meeting includes repetitive statements, going off topic, shouting, outbursts from the audience, surpassing the 2-minute time limit. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Presentations, item 4A, proclamation to Mackenzie Boone, Vice President of the Boys and Girls Club of Kern County Board of Directors, declaring National Boys and Girls Clubs Week in Bakersfield during the week of June 26, 2023.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have the Boys and Girls Club here. It's coming up, National Boys and Girls Club Week, which celebrates the nation's 5,000 clubs serving more than 4 million children. We are so fortunate in Kern County to have more than 500 people operating over 50 sites. Boys and Girls Club, I think you're one of the shining stars in the nation. And so thank you to Mackenzie Boone, who's the board vice president, Zane Smith, executive director, and all of the volunteers and the team. And so it's my honor to read this proclamation. Whereas the young people of Bakersfield are the leaders of today and tomorrow, and many young people need professional youth services to guide them to reach their full potential. And whereas 51 club sites throughout Bakersfield and Kern County provide services to more than 8,000 young people daily, and whereas boys and girls clubs in our city help to ensure that young people are occupied by offering them a safe and supportive refuge and providing quality programs, and whereas through workforce readiness programs including career launch, Money Matters, and Do-It-Yourself STEM, youth develop skills to close the job skills gap. And now, therefore, I, Karen Go, Mayor of the City of Bakersfield, do hereby proclaim June 26th through June 30th as National Boys and Girls Club Week in our city, and call upon our citizens to join in recognizing the Boys and Girls Club of Kern County for providing comprehensive and effective services to the young people in our city. And it is my honor to be able to present this to our Vice President. Thank you so much, Ms. Mackenzie.
And thank you so much, Mayor Go, and the City of Bakersfield Council for those wonderful remarks about our entity. I'm just one representative from our board of directors, but we do have a team of over 600 employees. We do have 68 different sites where we support our children, and there are about 8,000 that attend our programs daily. On top of that, one thing that I always like to mention, because we are such a vast organization, we also serve about 4,500 meals regularly. That's every single day coming out of our Niles location kitchen. And those are through donations from the community and from those of you who spread awareness about our organization and make sure that the children of Kern County are taken care of in those after-school programs and our summer day camp. And so once again, I just want to say thank you guys so much for your recognition. Thank you.
Tonight we have an interpreter here. Would you come forward and just explain, please, that we have the service available?
Buenas tardes. La reunión de esta noche del Consejo Municipal, hay servicios de interpretación en español para su conveniencia, en la entrada del salón están los audífonos. Nomás pedimos que al fin de la reunión lo regresen al mismo lugar. Gracias.
Thank you so much. You are the most amazing interpreter. I always marvel at how you do this. He listens at the same time and interprets. Next item now, Madam Clerk.
Public statements.
Thank you. In keeping with the Council's resolution, the public statements portion is now divided into two periods. There's a period for items listed on the meeting agenda and items not on the meeting agenda. Statements for items listed on tonight's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total per agenda item. The consent calendar as a whole constitutes one agenda item. Statements regarding items not listed on the agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give them to the clerk, who will give copies to the council. If you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and give your completed card to the city clerk. We ask that you mark whether you're here to speak on an item listed on tonight's agenda or in a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify a specific agenda item will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda portion. Those speakers will be called during the non-agenda portion of the meeting. If you're here on consent calendar hearing items 8A through 8C and hearing items 9A through 9B, now is not the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity to speak when those items are called later in the meeting. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. However, due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items listed on tonight's agenda?
Mayor Go, we've received 2 speaker cards for items listed on tonight's agenda. The first public speaker is Ryan Nance regarding item 7AC.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Nance.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Ryan Nance, representative with the Southwest Carpenters. We're here tonight in support of the Ledge and Lit Committee's recommendation to adopt a support stance regarding both SB 4 and 423. We want to applaud the members of that committee, Manpreet Kaur, Andre Gonzalez, and Bruce Freeman, for supporting these important bills that could assist our city in meeting its housing goals. I wanted to share with you what Senator Grove said on the Senate floor regarding SB 423. She said that if the CityServe project would have been built under this bill, the project would be much further along by now, if not complete. It's important to note that Senator Grove voted yes on both bills. Lastly, we ask that the city generate letters of support for both SB 4 and 423 to be sent to the office of the author. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Nance. Next speaker, please, Mr. Fox. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Fox. I am going to bring back something to my youth. In the 30s, 1930s, during the Depression, this city built a sewage farm. It's on South Mount Vernon, and turned wastewater into ag water. And I was just wondering, so you got a couple items regarding this. There's been the times to going to bring it up at a state commission. Brag on us, but I want to be sure that we have something to brag about. I know we've had some problems with Art has told me about trying to give it away. And I was just wondering how we're doing with recycling of the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Madam Clerk, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Boyle, I wondered if did you read the language of the bill that we supported at committee and Mr. Nance was talking about? Do you have that language? Because my understanding, and this was on government, was it state-owned property? Mr. Nance, you can help answer these two if you're still here. This was on state-owned land? Is that right?
So there are two different bills. SB4 is the Faith and Lands Act, and it's specific to religious, organization properties and nonprofit colleges. SB 423 is actually an extension of the bill that that Senator Wiener passed years ago called SB 35.
Okay.
And so SB 35 is, pertaining to affordable housing and that sort of thing. It had a sunset on it, and so SB 423 is the answer to that sunset from that original bill.
And is it that land, is this on land that was either, to say, somewhere owned or leased by the state, or just any land?
My understanding with 423 in specific is that, yeah, it's any land that as I was reading it, but you'd have to read it in detail.
And it's trying to streamline approvals and set dates, tight dates to get things approved. But there was language in here about, I was confused, quite honestly, in the language about, okay, General Services kind of takes over a city, approves it, but then the city, if the city has objective standards or the city has to confirm, have you had a chance to look at this? Only because I think it's okay. It's just hard for me to understand the way this was written up on. And didn't you say we're developing objective standards anyway?
Yes, we are. We are developing objective standards. When you look at the two bills, I think their intent is to provide for additional opportunities for residential development. With 4, that would be on state lands or state leased lands. So in a way, the state could lease lands and then using that bill provide for additional affordable housing opportunities, as well as church properties too. When it comes to SB 423, that is an extension of SB 35, originally sponsored and adopted into law in 2017. That's a permit streamlining act, typically called the Permit Streamlining Act. And staff doesn't necessarily have a problem with some of the verbiage included in there to provide for other lands to be used for residential development. Our concerns are largely about verbiage changes that speak to the very direct tie of housing elements compliance with your regional housing needs allocations. That's a difficult tie when you're talking about the implications of meeting RHNA and having a certified housing element. And the verbiage speaks to 6th cycle and 7th cycle specifically, and there are direct changes to SB 35 that do just that. So there's some dialogue from our lobbyist that says largely the provisions of SB 35 largely aren't changed, but I'm an alarmist and I am distinctly aware that it would be very difficult for the city to maintain a certified housing element if we were required to be building 2,277 low-income housing units a year and a total of a little just shy of 4,700 units annually.
No city can meet that. We can't, nor can any other city in California.
I don't want to be
remotely close. But
I don't want to be an alarmist, but that is the verbiage has changed within SB 35 and speaks directly about that.
I can speak one thing on the change to the language from SB 35 to this 423. So the language that was in SB 35 was similar to the language that was used with CityServe. So that has what they call a skilled and trained workforce requirement, and that's been the developer and owner's #1 complaint, is trying to meet that requirement. So SB 423 eliminates that for the most part. It makes it only applicable to like over 200 units. So, doubtful we would be building things like to that scale here, but it does make the labor protections still good for folks like us, but a lot less restrictive and a lot easier for that developer and owner to meet.
yeah, I think those are all good things about it. Are you saying that, Mr. Boyle, that there's fairly clear language that implies some sort of punishment for cities if this passes, and which would apply, I guess, to all cities, who can't meet their housing element, you know, the 22,000 we can't even build like one without 100% subsidy. I'm just kind of, where is
the bill stops short.
Coming from
the bill stops short of specifically saying that failure to comply with your regional housing need allocation results in decertification, but it comes right to that doorstep. So noting that the legislature has been trending in that direction, and the governor in 2021 actually struck some of that verbiage as part of other housing generation bills. I watch it very closely, and that verbiage is in there, but it does stop short.
Councilmember Freeman, are we able to move on?
All right.
Yeah, just go ahead.
I don't think this bill does that, but I understand.
It'll be coming back it'll be coming back later in the agenda. Right, thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Non-agenda public statements. We've received one speaker card from Laura Helford.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council people. I was here once before and was pushed off to the side, and unfortunately nothing's changed. I think the residents and the people of Bakersfield need to know that damage has been done to our sewer lines, and they've been done by unlicensed contractors that the city allowed to work for months in the city, boring underneath our streets. They hit numerous laterals, sewer laterals, gas lines, water lines. But unfortunately, the Public Works Department can't tell me how long they were working in town without a permit. They don't know. It's funny, they can tell me how much money they took in inspector fees, but the inspectors never noticed that the name of the company that was supposedly working here isn't the same as the company and the name of the side of the trucks that were working here. Months, they didn't notice. They go out and inspect, and one company is supposed to be doing this job, but that's not the company that's there, and nobody notices. And now we are stuck with damaged sewer lines that were not put back the way that they should have been put back. They've got patches on them that will eventually fail. And if we're lucky, our houses won't flood. Some of us weren't so lucky in 2019, and our houses flooded on Christmas. And I can't get answers. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, and I just can't get any honest, solid answers, and I'm tired of it. I was promised things, and I'm not getting them, and I want to know why.
Mrs. Helford, thank you so much. Sorry for your flooding, and then Mr. Clegg, can staff follow up on this, please? Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
America, we've received an additional public speaker card for non-agenda items by Camila Chavez.
Welcome, Ms. Chavez.
Good evening, Mayor Go, Vice Mayor Gonzalez, and council members. My name is Camila Chavez, Executive Director of Dolores Huerta Foundation. I am here this evening to provide you and the community of Bakersfield with an update as to the progress of the Dolores Huerta Peace and Justice Center, a project slated for construction on 21st and I Street. I have provided a handout showing some of the project's floor and site plan. As many of you are aware, in 2020, we launched a fundraising initiative to construct a new multicultural community center and office building in downtown's I Street corridor. Since then, we have raised $23 million for this effort. Current estimates for the total development and construction costs are $35 million. The total square footage of our building will be 30,000 square feet. Programs at the Cultural Center will include a 3,800 square foot indoor multi-purpose hall, an outdoor event center and courtyard, a community resource center, meeting spaces, a youth center, a cafe, an art gallery, recording studio, and our offices and headquarters. We are currently in escrow to close on this property. On May 25th, DHF site plan was approved, clearing the way for finalization of our construction plans and specifications. Our architects are currently in schematic design. Our goal is to have plans submitted by December this year, close our financing by June of 2024, and start construction by third quarter 2024. We hope to move into our new building December 2026. We invite the City of Bakersfield to partner with us by providing grant funding to offset the costs of construction and offsites. Our project manager, Emilio Huerta, has been in conversation with Christian Clegg, Paul Sedania, and now Jason Cater, exploring partnership opportunities for this great project. Thank you for your consideration. Si se puede, it can be done.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Chavez, for coming to council today and speaking, and also thank you to the foundation for this beautiful vision for our whole region. And I'm so honored that you chose downtown Bakersfield to site your project. It's my opinion, colleagues, that as the downtown councilman, that this project will be an incredible enhancement for our downtown. It will provide a unique amenity. Not every city will have an institution and center like this. And so I believe it will be a tourist attraction. It will drive new revenue, but it's also such an incredible beacon of hope and history and wonderful culture that will be a great service to so many people today and in the future. And so I truly hope that the city of Bakersfield can be a partner in this project. Dolores Huerta is a national figure, a labor and civil rights leader. I don't need to go on and on about who she is. I think many of us know that she is a recipient of the United States Presidential Eleanor Roosevelt Award for Human Rights, recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the first Latina who was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. This is a woman who's well-renowned, and she lives right here in Bakersfield. I don't know if there's anyone else in our city who is more celebrated than she. And so I would like to make a referral tonight that city staff look at opportunities and ways in which we can partner financially to help this project move forward with city dollars. Specifically looking at the Urban Renewal Redevelopment Funds through our PSUS fund, and also the Business District Revitalization funding under ARPA framework. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you. Thank you, Camila, for being here, and for the Dolores Huerta Foundation for your decades of work. Just to echo the sentiment of Vice Mayor Andre Gonzalez, Dolores Huerta and her legacy lives on in a region that is so proud of its agricultural existence and industry. For farm workers who didn't have the right to take a break, to sit under the shade of a tree, to use the bathroom, just fundamental human rights were awarded to these farm workers through the legacy of so many who have come before us. And this multicultural center, just looking at the renderings, it's beautiful. And it will be, I agree, a tourist attraction, and will attract so many folks to our city, to the downtown corridor, and to learn the history of agriculture, farm workers, and the dedication to civil rights and human rights that is so emphasized right here in our hometown. And I wanted to second and echo my support of the Vice Mayor's referral tonight, and wanted to thank you all for bringing such a beautiful building, space that so many will benefit from, especially our youth and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaur. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Camila. Oh, there you are. I can see you now. I really appreciate you bringing this back to our attention, and congratulations to you and the team. I know it's been a long way coming. I remember us presenting the check from the state a couple years ago now, it seems. And I know that costs are continuing to grow. And I just appreciate your guys' endurance and resiliency to get this project done because, as my colleagues have mentioned, this is something that is going to transform downtown Bakersfield and truly bring a tourist attraction right here to the center and to the heart of Bakersfield. She has, and when I say she, Dolores has so many fans, across the state of California, across the country. I feel like every other day she's up there in DC working with legislators to develop policy and help, working families in the Central Valley, but, in general. And I just want to echo the comments from the Vice Mayor and Councilwoman Kaur, fully supportive of us looking for those dollars to help support the foundation and this Peace and Justice Center. I'll just say that I think it's an honor for us as a city, the city of Bakersfield, to be the home of a future center like this. I think of places like La Paz, I think of 40 Acres, and now a center right here, right in the heart of Bakersfield. And so for that, I just want to thank you guys for choosing our community, our city, and we're incredibly honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Appointments item 6A, appointment of an alternate member to Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO, by Vice Mayor Gonzalez.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll appoint Councilmember Eric Arias to be the alternate member of LAFCO.
If a motion, please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Consent calendar items 7A through 7AD for approval.
Vice Mayor.
Does any council member wish to recuse themselves from any item? Seeing none, I have requests to pull items 7K and 7AC for separate consideration. With that, I'll make a motion to approve all other consent calendar items.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. And now, item 7K, Councilmember Gray.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. This particular consent calendar agreement is concerning CityBot and its artificial intelligence that we would be bringing into our city. And I wanted to just pull it so that we could just talk about it, maybe have Mr. Provost come up and kind of share a little bit about it. I know there's a lot of concern. We're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence in the news today. It can be a really wonderful thing, and then it can go really south on us too. And so I think there's could be a lot of fear around something like this. So I thought it would be good to talk about it. So, Mr. Provost, if you can just tell me what type of questions, when our constituents call in, what type of questions will be answered through this artificial intelligence and be addressed, and just kind of give us a little more information than what we have here in the administrative report.
Certainly, Mayor, Councilwoman. This is going to be essentially implemented to be more of a chat bot for our website. So it would answer common questions, things that we would actually program into it. We would probably we would work with the vendor to develop that database of answers based off the questions that are asked of it. So this is just another mechanism that we can communicate with our constituency where they can ask questions such as, when's my trash pickup, things of that nature. It's not utilizing so much the AI that you're hearing about in the news quite a bit. It's not going to be constructing answers. Again, it's going to reference a database of answers to common questions.
Okay, so if there's important issues that they want to hear a real person at the other end of the phone. Will this be able to defer those questions to the right department or the right people or our help team to help them out?
I have not gotten into that level of detail to affirmatively answer that, but I would imagine if we work with the vendor to program it as such, then it will do so.
Okay. I know there's nothing more frustrating than calling an 800 number and you can't talk to a person. And I had a constituent this week that I talked to that had gone through just call after call, and he was up to his gills. And we were able to straighten that out and get him calmed down. So that's what I hope that this doesn't cause more of that to happen, and we can still, but I can understand, you know, there's certain questions that tie up a lot of time from staff. So I totally understand that too. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate your clarification.
Certainly. Thank you.
Councilmember Gray, would you like to make a motion on this item?
Yes, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve this item.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. And now item 7AC, Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mayor. It appears we have Sacramento dictating how our city is going to look and how it's going to be, and the zoning. And I thought maybe we should have a little chat about this, and maybe Christian, you could have a few comments, because I know that staff was against this, and it has been changed to, staff hasn't been changed, but the committee voted for it.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Weir and Mayor and Council. This is for the public's benefit. This is related to the SB 423 and SB 4 legislative bills, and the recommendation from the Legislative and Litigation Committee was to adopt positions of support for those bills. For a point of clarity, staff had recommended a position of support for SB 4, but we had recommended a position of oppose for SB 423. So some of the reasons for that. In our legislative platform, we've taken a pretty strong stance in support of local control. And so whenever we see bills that start to infringe upon that local control, our default has been to oppose those bills that are infringing on local control and support those bills that retain our local control. I would acknowledge, just as Mr. Boyle did earlier, that we recognize that this bill is intended to help streamline affordable housing. But as we looked at some of the details, there was just concerns on our part from the staff level of some of the details of how that was trying to be accomplished, moving the bar closer towards those RHNA numbers being requirements as opposed to stretch goals, as well as just having more of a prescriptive process in determining local land use decisions. Ultimately, we are obviously supportive of efforts to improve housing, streamlining, absolutely. But we were concerned principally about that local control issue. It was brought up at the committee level, and the committee did make the recommendation, I think, and not to speak on behalf of committee members, they can weigh in, but I think principally of the need for assistance and help towards housing really being the greater area of concern than the local control, but that's why staff had originally taken that position of oppose.
And so is this going to make more housing available?
Hard to say. I do think that some of the streamlining does show promise.
But could I just say streamlining as per the California state, or streamlining as for what we would like to do?
Per the state.
So once again, we're left with no choice.
I think that would be a fair statement that we have less local discretion, yes.
Okay, so are we ever going to meet the RHNA?
You want to take that one, Mr. Boyle?
As you know, I like to win, and so my official statement will be that one day we will meet our 37,461 unit requirement, as we have planned to do so within our soon-to-be submitted to the State Department of Housing and Community Development's six-cycle housing element. Now, that may sound a little snarky, but I mean it. I'm trying really hard to meet our regional housing need allocation. Have we ever? No. In fact, I could provide an annual progress report that showed that we were very pleased since 2019, where we have provided, on average, about 300 new affordable housing, low and very low income affordable housing units annually per the progress report. But I must remind you that our new target will be 2,277 units. So if you'd allow me to explain the connection, SB 35 has a process where there are only certain findings that can be made to deny an affordable housing project. And if you can't make those findings, then the streamlined process is really called the builder's remedy, where a builder can move forward regardless of zoning or development standards or what have you, local development standards, to build that project. And in the past, I might note one of those terms is that one reason why you could deny is that you have met your regional housing need allocation numbers. But there's never been a reference or a direct link to a place where the builder's remedy can be utilized when a city is not in substantial non-compliance with its housing element, and specifically calls out the regional housing need allocation as being a measure of whether you are in housing element compliance. And that's the change in verbiage that comes to SB 35, because it's inserted into the original SB 35 languages that are already in code that speak to triggering the builder's remedy, which provides wide margins of independent judgment in terms of how things are built. And so that's why staff hesitates. You really are this one step away. Now, why are we sort of insulated from even the term builder's remedy? Well, to our credit, we've never denied an affordable housing project. So there's never been a call out where the builder's remedy might be utilized in a methodology to streamline a low income or affordable housing project through our processes. We've never been in that place. So the builder's remedy has never been called out by the development community as a result. So, but theoretically, if we're not able to meet those RHNA units, we will be considered to be in non-compliance with our housing element, potentially, which could allow for triggering the builder's remedy, which would excuse any local development standards within the building of those units. And the only real component that still is retained is CEQA, which is state environmental law. That's still applicable whether builder's remedy is employed or otherwise. But our development standards, objective standards, or otherwise, they would be circumseded by or superseded by the builder's remedy approach. And that's why I step back and pause a little bit. I want to see state lands be utilized and provide a streamlined objective standard process that we will provide in our updated housing ordinance. But if the state interprets the new verbiage such that builder's remedy could be utilized because we're not in compliance with our regional housing need allocation, which could happen. We're going to do everything we can to build almost 4,700 units annually. But if it does happen, that's a possibility. And I think that everyone in the room would agree that retaining local authority, local land use authority is paramount within any development process, and so consequently staff is hesitant to provide for support of 423.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that, because we seem to be heading one way, and we don't seem to be heading in the direction of what Bakersfield might want or need, but we're going to stay in compliance with what we have to do. So is this going to, are we going to have a lot more ground like this, land like this, where it's just, they're just taking it? There's no rules, no regulations, they're just taking it.
My opinion would be that, God bless America. The market drives what comes out of the ground, and that said, I can't really speak to whether or not either law really, results in additional affordable units coming out of the ground. It will certainly provide a pathway for those units to come out of the ground, but the market has to drive whether those units come out of the ground or otherwise. The city only provides a pathway for developers to build. We don't actually build anything. And whether Sacramento provides streamlined processes for churches to use their extra land, or educational institutions to use their extra land, or for the state themselves to use surplus lands for the development of affordable housing, that's still really a byproduct of whether the market wants to see that come out of the ground.
Even so, by right land, I mean, by right is just, it means you have no choice. The owners have the choice, and the city has little or no discretion over what happens.
The city may only employ objective development standards to those developments, and the Planning and Development Committee has provided staff direction, and staff has followed that direction to consultant to prepare objective development standards so that the city is best positioned to provide for by right development at a certain standard per the objective development standards. Without the objective standards, my answer to you would be, you're absolutely correct, council member.
So it lessens the blow? Is that what we're talking about? We still have a little piece that we can go after, or?
Short answer, yes. I don't know if I'd preface it as a blow, but the short answer is, although we may have less discretion through our planning commission and our council, we still would have some control over design criteria for that development as it came out of the ground, as it was entitled through a site plan review process.
And do we see in the future, in the next few years, where we will lose those planning standards? They will not be applicable?
Well, that's a very good question. The Planning and Development Committee has given us direction to use a great degree of conservatism in what those standards look like. And standards, I think that's a great starting point for the city of Bakersfield in terms of the direction provided by the Planning and Development Committee. The city council can can direct staff to amend those as it may seem fit. But I would say within your question that other cities, certain cities that have very, very, very detailed and ornate objective development standards, although they're objective and there's no subjective decisions being made by staff, they're very, very weighty ordinances. Sacramento has already looked hard at addressing those through state ordinance, and I think it's reasonable that some ordinance will be proposed by Sacramento in the next couple of legislative sessions that look to curtail the amount of requirements that an objective standard might employ.
Okay, so basically we're unsure of that we're going to have any rights on this property in the near future.
Sacramento will make that determination, but we will move forward trying to prepare to
I
position the city appropriately.
I understand the staff is going to do the best they can to work out this the best they can. But we're being put in an untenable situation. And I don't want to see Bakersfield zoned and built according to California standards, the state standards.
I think there are many municipalities that would echo that sentiment.
Okay. All right. So that's enough on this. We're losing our housing. We're losing a lot of rights. And I think at some point in time, you have to make a stand. And tonight's the night for me. So I make a motion to not approve that item.
Thank you, Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Gray.
Well, I would echo my colleague, Councilmember Weir. We are seeing state overreach in this great state of California that I was born and raised in and love. But we are seeing state overreach in our local governments, our autonomy being stripped away from us with bill after bill after bill in Sacramento. For us to have to bypass our local standards and just allow for any type of building being thrown up in our city without us not being able to make the decision, our local planning commission, what's even the point of having a planning commission if you have laws like this on the books in Sacramento? What's even the point? So it's just real frustrating to me. This has been bothering me for the last 24 hours internally, that again, our governor is stealing more and more ground, literally and figuratively, from us every stinking day. I just heard him in an interview 2 nights ago that said he is now beginning to sue cities that don't meet their requirements. Sue cities. What are we supposed to do? How do we bring these developers in if they can't even make a profit on what they're doing? So it's insane as the insanity, again, is showing its head in Sacramento, and I hate to be so pointed about this, but I'm going to be, because if we do not wake up in this state, that's why we have hundreds of thousands of people leaving, and stand against this type of legislation that is hurting us at a local level, we are going to be in big trouble here in the state of California. And we already are. We're already in debt. We're already behind the 8 ball. So anyway, with that, I am not able to support this SB 423 either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Core.
First, I want to thank our carpenters who are representing the working class families of Kern County, the city, and the greater Central Valley and South. As a member of the Ledge and Lit Committee, I have seen the process from when the lobbyists first brought the bills forward as to what the stances were recommended. From a city staff perspective, I did share at the committee that I do think there's also a flaw in that process. I think the committee, should have more say in the bills that do come through and come forward in front of the committee, so that the committee of an elected body can have a say in kind of where we're supporting or opposing or where we stand, and then conversation taking place at that committee. And so at the last meeting, we had an opportunity to share that and talk through some of these bills. I do want to emphasize that I have full confidence in our planning department and in our city staff for bringing affordable housing to the city and to our communities. It is a fact that our state and our city are in a housing crisis. We talk about affordable housing pretty often. We are incredibly proud and celebrate the successes of Mercy House, where our houseless neighbors are able to find refuge, are able to find a roof over their heads. But there's something that comes next after being at a place like Mercy House or at our BLNC, at our navigation center. There is a transition. Folks must be transitioned into affordable housing in order for more folks to come in through BLNC, and that cycle repeats. There is a houselessness crisis, a homelessness crisis in our city, across the state, across the nation. And these two bills, I mean, of course, we're talking about the one that maybe we're mostly, where city staff's recommendation is to oppose. I feel strongly that it is less about Sacramento telling the city what to do, and it's more so that we are aligned with our state legislatures, our elected officials in the state, in the Senate, like Senator Shannon Grove, as Ryan has shared, who are supporting this bill. This bill has bipartisan support. It is actually something that is one of a kind. It is unique to see such bipartisan support, but it also emphasizes that there's a recognition of the affordable housing crisis that our state is facing. These two bills allow for something that will alleviate that. Of course, we are doing our best to also meet the RHNA needs, to meet the affordable housing crisis locally. But if our state legislatures, our elected officials are recommending that from this area, who are representing us in Sacramento, are saying, these bills we are in support of, then as the city of Bakersfield, we are sending a message that we agree with you. We agree with our state elected officials in saying that, yes, we welcome affordable housing. We welcome what eases the process in being able to keep housing affordable in places like the city of Bakersfield, where we celebrate being one of the only cities left in the state where housing is still affordable. I think that is worth noting, that this is guidance from those who we have elected to represent us in Sacramento, and rather we are aligning with them as a city and sharing in our support, in whether it's a letter or showing our support, that the city of Bakersfield welcomes affordable housing, and that is what really I see this being as in terms of the support that we are showing from a local level. This bill is well on its way. Just to share, for folks who aren't following the Senate or the Assembly bills, this bill is well on its way. So rather, I think it creates an opportunity for us to engage with our state elected officials, the bills that are coming down, as this is actually a new process that we are doing at the city. And this sends a message that we are engaged, we are informed, and we will do what it takes to bring affordable housing to the city of Bakersfield.
Thank you, Councilmember Corr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a comment about what is paramount, and I think building more housing, more affordable housing in the state of California as soon as possible is paramount. The reality is, and what has been discussed on this dais and in city council chambers throughout the state, is there's just simply not enough affordable housing in this state. That is the reality that we're facing at this time. Housing scarcity has pushed up housing costs throughout the state, making it less affordable, which has contributed to the homelessness and houselessness crisis in the state. And there's a reason for it. Cities have made decisions locally to deny projects, deny housing projects in their communities. SB 35 has been an action taken by the state legislator in order to address that. This bill, SB 423, actually includes a coastal zone exemption. Mr. Boyd, can you describe to us what that exemption includes?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Actually, I thought that the coastal zone exemption was being taken out of SB 35, but along the coastal area, there is state law has separate ordinance that speaks to municipalities that are in close concert to the coast and are under the guise of the California Coastal Commission. I could be wrong, but in review, I felt that one of the other changes to SB 35 was bringing cities that were under the Coastal Commission under the ordinance for SB 35.
Right, so SB 423 removes that coastal exemption.
Exactly.
Yeah, which will help induce further housing production in municipalities along the coast, which ultimately, statewide, will help us produce additional housing units. I think this is the paramount priority, and I think we do need to wake up. We need to wake up to the crisis we have on our hands, and we need to wake up to the reality that every single municipality in this state ought to take action and ought to be part of the solution. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we approve this resolution tonight.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Freeman.
I want to get clarification one more time that 423 is state-owned land, leased land, churches, these certain categories. Is that correct or not?
SB 423 is specific to state lands. SB 4 is specific to the religious institution excess lands and the educational property excess lands.
In both cases, they're trying to get the same type of streamlining. Well, I take a little bit different view. Well, first of all, when we say affordable housing, let's be realistic. There will be no privately developed affordable housing anywhere in California. It can't be done. Affordable means 50% of median, 80% of median. We can't build anything within 100% of that. Can't be done in the state of California because of the building codes, the high standards we have, and just general inflation. So you won't ever see one. Castle and Cooke won't be building housing for 50% of median if they can't lose $10 million on every small project. So these are, we're only talking about a tiny potential number of projects on state-owned land, church-owned land. It's a very, very tiny number. And for that reason, I don't feel we have a huge threat here of losing local control because there are almost none of those lands existing anyway. And the second thing, though, is those kind of institutions, whether it's a church or might even be the state, these are going to be fully funded by nonprofit because you can't make a profit building a house. So, and I want to see a lot more creativity allowed in housing, different kinds of housing, different construction, different everything to bring the costs down, which can't be done under any standard set of building codes, can't be done. But I'm just sort of hoping maybe it's on a church property and they're building, 100 units for seniors or something, that this would open up some ability to build different kinds of units that could be built much more affordably. They wouldn't really be market rate units. There might be a 450 square foot, one bedroom that you couldn't market in Bakersfield, but if it was on a church-owned property for seniors, they might be thrilled to live there. So I think I'm looking at this a little different. First, it's a very narrow number of units that will ever be built, and they won't be built in the private sector. And I'd really love to see some creativity allowed, because if we don't really break the mold, we will never see any new innovation in housing that brings the cost down. Because if we keep doing it the same way, what is the average price in Bakersfield, 400,000 or something? Well, you can't afford that, making 100% of median. And we are the most affordable city in the state of California. Remember that. We're the most affordable in the state, and you can't even come close. So for that reason, I'm kind of supportive of anything that takes a few slivers of land and allows some creativity on them. And maybe we'll see something interesting come out of the box. So I guess I look at this a little differently, and that's the reason I'm supportive of. I don't know what'll happen, but I'd like to see somebody get creative on a church property or a state property or something like that. It's a little different reason than some of my colleagues. So I'm supportive of them just to see if we can make something happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. I don't see any other requests to speak. We will take the second motion first, which is Vice Mayor's motion in support. You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Weir and Councilmember Gray voting no.
Thank you. Next item, please. And let's just give our carpenters an opportunity to get out. Okay. Actually, if you all want to take a stretch break, we will start in just a minute when Vice Mayor gets back. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar public hearing, item 8A, public hearing to consider resolution approving and adopting the Public Works Director's report for the Consolidated Maintenance District and the 2023-24 CMD budget, confirming the park landscaping assessments and authorizing the collection of assessments by the Kern County Tax Collector. 8B, public hearing to consider resolution approving and adopting the Public Works Director's report for the Consolidated Maintenance District in the 2023-2024 CMD budget, confirming the street and median landscaping assessments and authorizing the collection of assessments by the Kern County Tax Collector. And item 8C, public hearing to consider resolution approving and adopting the Public Works Director's report for 25 traffic signal maintenance districts and the 2023-2024 CMD budget, confirming the assessments and authorizing the collection of assessments by the Kern County Tax Collector.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The purpose of this section is to vote on all of the items listed under consent calendar hearings in one motion without further comment. If anyone would like to speak on any of the hearing items, the item must be removed from this portion of the agenda. If an item is removed, it will be placed at the end of the regular public hearings portion of the meeting. At this time, I'll open consent calendar public hearing items 8A through 8C. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to request that a hearing item be removed from the consent calendar? If so, please come forward. This isn't the time to take testimony, only remove the matter from the consent calendar hearings. Seeing none, does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar hearings? Councilmember Freeman.
I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
Okay. And this is Mr. Strackhouse and I have been conversations on this very item for quite a while. And one of my questions is, once we vote tonight, these will be fixed for the next fiscal year. Is that right? We can't go back and change them.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Then I will kind of, because I think it's important, sort of repeat this in public. Before we have to set them again in the future, and hopefully much sooner than that, that we actually get line item cost estimates for each of our tiers, fresh new ones of every single item contained. Go get some bids, find out if we have to, what does it cost for replacing bushes per square foot, just that we do a real budget. These assessments are actually tiny when you look at, if you looked at the schedule, the amount of money people get charged per year is almost nothing. I think was the biggest one, $250 a year on your tax bill. So we're not talking about big assessments to people, and I don't think anyone even notices them, whether they were $220 or $230 last year on your tax bill. So we're not talking about huge taxes that are driving people out of business. But when they add all up, if we're undercharging because we haven't done fresh estimates, which we had discussions, and we have not for quite a few years, I just want to be sure that we're recovering the costs that it really cost us to provide the service. No more, not trying to make a profit, but that we can, the individual go out and cut the lawns and the bushes and replace the bulbs and the street lights and all things in these maintenance districts that we have. We can finally look at a new budget. We may increase it by CPI each year. That's fine, but we haven't done this in so many years. We don't know what we're increasing anymore. It could be too high, it'd be too low. I have a feeling in all cases, it's 99.9, it's always too low. It's never too high when you haven't looked at a cost in years and years. So I'd really like us to, define the line items each tier, go get some new costs, and be sure that we're recovering all of our costs that we're expending, and it's not a bigger subsidy out of the general fund, which just takes money away from something else we'd like to do in our general fund. So if I can sort of know you'll continue to work with me on that, I'll totally support this stuff here.
Yes, sir. And at the budget workshop on Monday, Director Anthony and I committed to working together to provide those numbers, those line item numbers, to do a review of those numbers and come back with that data.
All right, thank you. My concerns are met.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. So at this time, consent calendar public hearing items 8A through C is now closed. Vice Mayor, motion.
Thank you. I move to approve consent calendar public hearing items.
Thank you. Our next item is public hearings. I'm sorry. You have a motion. Please cast your votes. Pay attention.
Motion is unanimously approved.
And now, next item. Our next item is public hearings. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers per side, so it's important that you identify yourself and make your statement succinctly so others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to the staff's recommendation first. Then we'll hear from those who would like to speak in favor of staff's recommendation. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the TV screens behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone and identify yourself. After 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will flash, indicating your time is up. Quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be addressed until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, give them to the clerk, and she'll give copies to the council. Please be courteous to others who wish to speak. Madam Clerk, please read the first public hearing item.
Hearings item 9A, public hearing to consider adoption of the domestic water quality and monthly readiness to serve rates for fiscal year 2023-2024 to fiscal year 2027-2028. A staff memorandum has been provided on this item, transmitting 5 protests.
Thank you. And so at this time, public hearing item 9A is open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? If so, please come forward to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in support or in favor? Please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Vice Mayor?
Okay. I move to adopt the resolution on 9A. And I'm sorry, just for clarification from staff, the action requested for 9B?
We'll be taking 9B separate from 9A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, thank you. I move to adopt the resolution of 9A.
You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Madam Clerk, please read the next public hearing item.
Hearing item 9B, public hearing for the fiscal year 2023-24 operating and capital improvement program budgets. A staff memorandum has been provided regarding this item, transmitting correspondence received.
Thank you. And at this time, item 9B is open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? If so, please come forward, identify yourself, and proceed. This would be opposition to 9B. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Sandra Melgoza, and I'm a policy advocate with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. The Keep Bakersfield House campaign thanks the city for the ongoing collaboration on the efforts to provide eviction prevention services to all residents in the city of Bakersfield. Residents are in dire need of a comprehensive eviction prevention services program that will help inform tenants of their rights and provide attorney representation for tenants facing an eviction. We ask that $1 million in the upcoming budget be allocated for a pilot program that will help give tenants the opportunity to stay housed amidst the ongoing housing crisis. Tenants are facing illegal rental increases, habitability issues, evictions, and so much more. Every week, we get calls from residents asking us for help because their landlord refuses to fix something or they have received a 3-day notice. Many ask us how they are supposed to find housing in 3 days. They have no idea how the eviction process even works. We refer them over to the 211 number that continuously hangs up on them or refers them over to other resources that in turn hardly ever provide the help or relief that residents are asking for. Additionally, while the local legal providers provide an invaluable service, the capacity does not meet the demand. Eligibility restrictions also create a barrier to access services for residents most vulnerable to an eviction. There's a strong need in the city for outreach and education on tenant evictions, on on tenant rights and attorney representation for all, the city must stop letting tenants brace themselves for evictions on their own and must help tenants have at least an opportunity to stay housed. We asked for $1 million in funding to begin a pilot program that will be extensive enough to meet the needs of residents. We note that on September 21st, 2022, the City Council approved a motion for $500,000 from ARPA to contingency to explore eviction prevention services. At this time, it is unclear if the funds will or will not be allocated for eviction prevention. Nonetheless, those funds will help meet the $1 million budget to provide a strong program that will have promising results. The City of Fresno began their eviction prevention program in 2021 and has held promising results, so much so that last night their City Council allocated $2.25 million to keep the program running. The City of Bakersfield is falling behind in the Central Valley, and we must catch up. We urge the City Council to allocate $1 million in funding from this year's budget for eviction prevention services. We thank the city for ongoing collaboration and for listening to residents who will speak tonight, and we hope to see this program helping residents be housed soon. Thank you. And there are also folks in support, if you can please stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Placencia. Who else would like to speak in opposition? Just come forward and identify yourself. Mr. Wesley.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, City Management. Wendell Wesley Jr. And not so long ago, everyone in our complex received a $100 rent increase. I knew it was baloney. So long story short, we had it rescinded. But I don't think if I was there, a lot of the seniors there were like, what are we going to do? Some are like, well, I can just barely pay it. I go, no, you don't have to pay that. That's more than 10%. So there are bad people everywhere. Some of them are landlords. Some of them are probably doctors, dental, retail workers. You know, it's just our society. And here in Bakersfield, we are the sound of something better. So I called them out. And here as leaders, we need to model what we represent. I try to follow In God We Trust. I'm a faithful believer in Jesus Christ. And the fact of the matter is, we need this $100 million because there are people being wrongfully evicted. And that's not who we are. It's not who we want to be. Okay, we already have a housing crisis. Okay, so we need to fix this problem. And we can't 100% help everybody and fix everything, but $100 million is a good start. And there are solutions to our housing problems. So I want to challenge each and every one of you to reach out to me because I think I have a really good solution that you all can get behind and even the state can get behind. And we also need to pay close attention to if we fix things here and make affordable housing here, are we going to get flooded with, you know, everyone just coming here if we don't fix it everywhere else? So let's be the model city on how it's done right and teach others how to do the same. City by city, county by county, state by state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wesley. Who else would like to speak in opposition? Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. Good evening. Mayor Go and council members. My name is Rosa Lopez, and I'm a long-term resident of Ward 2. I work with the ACLU of Southern California office, and through my job, I have the privilege of working with Bakersfield residents and county residents on many social and economic justice issues. Currently, we are engaging in just budget justice discussions, hearing directly from residents on how they want our funds invested. For years, we prioritized, our local government has prioritized certain departments in the name of public safety, while neglecting other departments like infrastructure, including sidewalks, street lights, and park and recreational activities, like skateboard parks or youth programs, youth leadership opportunities, which will really address the root cause of public safety concerns. It is time that you reconsider how you've approached public safety investments and move away from investing in over-policing and criminalizing our Black and brown communities. And as a response to public safety, and really invest in programs that will help our community live and thrive regardless of what zip code they live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Who else would like to speak in opposition to this item? Please come forward. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Okay. Good evening, board members and Mayor Go. My name is Rebecca, and I am a resident of Ward 2. And I grew up in Ward 4, and I attended the schools there. And now, as an adult, I am able to afford housing in Ward 2. I'm an advocate for my community, and I teach local college students about institutional and systemic racism. I'm here today to ask you to invest more funding into education and housing. These two are important foundations for everyone to have if we are to live healthy and stable lives. And right now, there is not enough funding invested into either of these. Instead, we have a majority of our funds going to the police department, who claims that they can't do anything about the nonviolent crime and theft that occurs in my community. What's the point of giving them more money if there's not much we all can do about the theft and vandalism? I firmly believe that if we invested more in education, housing, and opportunities for youth, we would have less of these crimes, which seem to be happening just about everywhere and instilling fear. I personally have countless stories of crime and vandalism that I witnessed in my community, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you about it because most of you already know. However, unlike my neighbors and I don't think most of you have to sleep with one eye open. Crime and vandalism happen because many people living in poor communities lack equitable schools and stable housing. Poverty is the issue that is causing crime, and it's not going to be resolved with an investment into tough on crime policies. History has already taught us that, and we're still in the same situation. So why not try something different, like investing in education and housing to help stabilize my community? More police is going to criminalize my community and tear apart families that are already struggling to live in harmony. Thank you all for considering this ask.
Thank you, Rebecca. Who else would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone else? Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Michael King. I'm with the Community Advisory Council. I come in today as a partner with the Leadership Council for Environmental Justice. Primarily, I do want to oppose 9B, primarily because I agree with the sentiments that everyone has been saying. The program budgets right now are identified for operating and capital improvements. The city of Bakersfield, what I've been recognizing, hasn't had a lot of investments in capital improvements. Things like things that will actually bring a return on our investment, not just going ahead and showing our financial support. My organization is working on educating the citizens in our areas for investments and how to get a return on their investments, how to build capital, get capital access, to go ahead and purchase real estate and go ahead and get a return on that real estate. We're learning how to create businesses so that we can go ahead and create cash flow into those businesses and bring that cash flow back into our communities and eventually pretty much back to tax dollars. So I would oppose this because I would like to see the city of Bakersfield, just as was mentioned earlier by Wes, that I would like to see for us to, you know, step up a little bit. Instead of putting that money into one area, put $100 million into education, put $100 million into capital investment, so we can go ahead and build not just a cultural center, but you can go ahead and build a financial district over in the Southeast. Instead of a lot of programs, we can teach people how to invest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this item? Welcome. We have about 3 minutes, just over 3 minutes for this section. Welcome. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, City of Bakersfield. My name is Hector Hernandez, and I'm here to support Leadership Council. As I mentioned, we're trying to push for the city to support this program, not only because we want to avoid, more homelessness in the community, but also because, we started to see more rise of crimes in the communities, and we're talking about fundings, we're talking about programs. When you invest in the community, in the actual community, not in the police department, not in the enforcement part of it, but we want more fundings to go to the communities for programs, projects, activities. We want to get kids out of the streets. We want to invest in their education, culture, and anything that we can get them out the street, the drugs and all that. So I'm not only here to support, the leadership proposal for the $1 million, but also we want for you guys to look into other programs and other activities that you guys can invest for our communities. There's a large concentration of indigenous communities on the east side of Bakersfield, and I know that a lot of them they're undocumented. And not only we want to be able to push this program, but we also want to make it equitable for the community, because I know that a lot of our indigenous don't have proper representation because due to legal status or economic situation. A lot of them are farm workers, and they don't make the money to hire an attorney to represent themselves on an eviction process. So I'm here to support and ask for the city to take action and be an example for other cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Is there anyone else? We have about a minute and a half left. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Vice Mayor?
Mayor Go?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't think you went over those I want to speak in favor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to begin by thanking all of the speakers tonight for your voices, for raising these important questions and issues, and for your clarion call for the city to invest in historically disadvantaged, underserved neighborhoods that have a high concentration of poverty and high need, and the recognition that in order for us to address public safety citywide, it requires far more investment than just the police. I hear you, and I agree full-heartedly. I will say it is something that I have always believed, and something that many of us on the dais have worked towards for quite some time. There are some things I would encourage the public to look at in this budget, including some of the investments we're making in youth development. And Mr. Clegg, I just wanted to, if you will, help me highlight some of those investments, because one of the things I'm most proud of is that for the first time in, I think, decades, and definitely in my lifetime, the city in this year's budget has an allocation of resources to partner with the county of Kern to invest in some of our local libraries, some of those libraries that serve East Bakersfield and Southeast Bakersfield.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. I have a couple suggestions of where I would point to where we are making investments in community in revitalization. So 2 budget cycles ago, we created what we called a community revitalization fund, and we funded that to the tune of $3 million. This upcoming budget continues a $2 million allocation, which is designed to provide infrastructure upgrades and assistance in our disadvantaged neighborhoods. It's one of the ways that we're funding efforts for our prosperity neighborhoods and things like matches for our Transformative Climate Communities grant, but also just other infrastructure efforts in those neighborhoods that have some of the biggest needs to catch up. While it's not directed at maybe the family or individual level, we're also investing in our economic opportunity areas, which are many of our also disadvantaged neighborhoods where we're making business grants available to small businesses to assist them with either refurbishing or starting a new business. Also, what was referenced around, we have $500,000 in last year's budget. We're renewing that again in this year's budget, which is violence prevention program dollars. And so we've recently received a report from staff on best practices related to programs that help youth stay out of at-risk behaviors, and that includes youth sports programming, after-school programs, mentoring, and as mentioned, access to libraries. And so we're activating those dollars in our disadvantaged neighborhoods to help in that vein. And then also, not to be overly presumptive, but I think it speaks directly to a lot of the feedback that was raised during the public comment for the public hearing, is that we have allocated $350,000 for eviction protection, homeless prevention services in the budget. I would respectfully suggest that it's not that we're at zero, we're not at $1 million, but amongst the many competing demands in the budget, we have set aside funds for a pilot project to provide this legal assistance for individuals that are facing eviction to try and prevent homelessness in scenarios where they perhaps are not getting fair treatment from a landlord. And so these are some just highlights of how we're investing in community, particularly in areas of challenge. I would also note our Affordable Housing Trust Fund has $5 million to help build affordable housing, and related to just homelessness services and the impacts of homelessness, we're allocating nearly $12 million in the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. You saved me a lot of time because I was about to go through the list and just ask you one by one. So I appreciate you highlighting a lot of the items that we are investing in this budget year, but certainly we can do more and we ought to do more as we progress forward. I did have a question. You referenced the $350,000. That is the Right to Counsel project. We also previously had allocated dollars for eviction prevention. Can you give us a status update on those dollars?
I can share some of the numbers, but I actually don't have an update on how many we've dispersed, but I'll share what I can.
Mm-hmm.
I think also just for a point of clarity, one of our comments we received was about a 2021 referral or action by council to set aside dollars. For clarity's sake, that was ARPA funding that was recommended for rental assistance in homelessness prevention, but not for legal counsel assistance. It was for rental assistance. Subsequent to that referral, we actually received an additional $700,000 from federal CARES dollars that was unspent by the county. And so we allocated, council took action more than a year ago to allocate that $700,000 towards a rental assistance program, mitigating the need to pull those dollars from ARPA. And so we didn't take that action for the $500,000 of ARPA because we actually had more funding in the $700,000 to fund that rapid rehousing or rental assistance program. To date, I don't have the number, but we can provide it to council of how many individuals we've helped with that rental assistance program and how much of those funds have been dispersed. They are not fully expended. And one of the intents of this program was to still support some of those individuals that, that there were millions of dollars made available by the U.S. Treasury during the pandemic for rental assistance. When that program expired, we knew there were some folks still on wait lists who hadn't received funds, and so we made this $700,000 available. It is not fully spent at this time, and so individuals still experiencing those challenges can contact our Economic and Community Development team to apply for those rental assistance funds.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I look forward to this pilot for $350,000, and I understand that there's a whole host of other additional potential services or actions that are being requested as well by the community. I'd like to make a referral tonight that we actually have another conversation outside of this council meeting with some of the community leaders so that we can identify specific gaps that they see and then allow us to explore other opportunities for funding, whether it be through ARPA or perhaps dollars that are unspent for some of these particular programs in the past. And then also that we add an item in the contingency bucket for mid-year. But at least now we can kind of get the ball rolling and also identify those gaps with another meeting if the leaders are willing to spend a little bit more time with us outside of this council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm also supportive, as is Councilman Gonzalez, on this 350. One thing I wanted to ask was, as we study this, is there a way we can leverage these funds by pairing up with groups that may already have the expertise to counsel some of the legal expertise? Do we have to start our own department, or are there others out there who are already doing some of this and have the expertise that we could share funding with them and leverage the dollars better? It just seems to me there's got to be some sort of an agency out there that performs this already and could just stretch these dollars further if they got, for example, 350, as opposed to our trying to hire new people and reinvent the wheel around here. So I'd really hope we can explore that and find a way to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Freeman. We entirely intend to contract out the administration of this program. We don't have necessarily the expertise. It doesn't make a lot of sense to build that team within city staff. There are at least 2 entities that work in Bakersfield that provide a level of legal assistance, but we think we'll put it out as a proposal and see who comes to the table, and that is specific to the legal counsel advice. I would draw a distinction with the rental assistance. There are some other nonprofits and even faith-based groups that do provide rental assistance. Most of the faith-based, it's respectfully smaller buckets of money, but there are some nonprofits that run rental assistance programs. I think my assessment would be that the demand is always greater than the resources available. But there are folks out there that are doing rental assistance.
Well, I think those stay separate and distinct. My question was really about funding and helping with the advice to people on their, rental rights and problems with evictions. So, thank you. That's good.
Thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak. Vice Mayor.
Again, I'll ask staff what the recommendation is.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Just as a point of clarity, I was going to just state as we were going into the public hearing, the action item tonight is not to adopt the budget. It was just a public hearing to receive feedback from the community. Our budget adoption will be at our next meeting on June 28th, and so there is no motion to make. It was just to receive feedback from the community related to the budget tonight.
No action tonight. Thank you.
Next item.
Reports item 10A, storm drain improvements along 20th Street and P Street. 1, receive and file staff report regarding downtown Monster storm drain study and the 20th and P Street storm drain improvement project. 2, accept bid and approve contract with Kern Pacific Construction for the construction of the 20th and P Street storm drain improvements. And 3, authorize staff to approve as necessary up to $50,000 in city-controlled contingency for unforeseen conditions encountered during construction.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I, Councilmember Bob Smith, will abstain from the following agenda item because I am redeveloping property adjacent to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Clegg, maybe we'll just give a minute for everybody to clear out.
Thank you, Mayor Go and Council. Just a couple of pieces of context, and then I'll turn over to our Public Works Director, Greg Strakalous. This project is a project that typically you might see, on a consent agenda, but there's a couple things about this project that we wanted to draw connections to the bigger picture, and so have prepared a report. One of the things that we're experiencing as we're trying to do redevelopment, in particular of downtown, although we're seeing redevelopment occur in some other areas of the city, the area where we have reuse, adaptive reuse and redevelopment that is occurring the most is in our downtown core. And one of the great things about Bakersfield is that we've been able to grow out over time, but we haven't done a lot of redevelopment in Bakersfield, particularly in key corridors. And so we've created several tools. We have our downtown street corridor plan that's been developed for how we're going to redevelop streets and sidewalks and curbs and gutters. We've also developed what we'll talk a little bit tonight about our storm drain master plan for downtown. And what we're finding is, because downtown is one of our oldest and most historic neighborhoods, the infrastructure is very aged in downtown. And typically, as we build new development, we have a well-oiled machine for how we pay for and build out that infrastructure, but we're not well practiced at how we rebuild infrastructure in our urban core. And so we're using downtown as our principal case study for how do we, as a government, facilitate the reconstruction of some of our key infrastructure in the downtown core, because our development processes don't typically address that type of redevelopment. And so wanted to highlight this particular project as a piece of a bigger plan and strategy for the redevelopment of downtown, but draw those connections with this specific action and that bigger plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. This report really begins with the 2020 Downtown Master Storm Drain Plan. That's a comprehensive look at the drainage system in the downtown area, which generally encompasses about 1,590 acres of area bounded by Union Avenue to the east, State Road 99 to the west, the Kern River and Golden State Highway to the north, and the BNSF Railway to the south. In the most general sense, the report identified the existing components of the stormwater management system in the downtown area to determine the capacity by which stormwater is collected and conveyed. With this information and other site conditions within the area, engineers created a hydraulic computer model which modeled different storm events. With that information, engineers can develop solutions to better manage stormwater and create projects and estimate what those project costs are, and that's what they did in this plan. So I'm going to take about a couple hundred pages and put it into one specific slide here. The 2020 master plan contains lots of great information, but this slide, there are 26 key recommendations that were identified and prioritized with cost estimates, and you'll notice that the 2020 cost total of about $15 million. Public Works has either completed or is about to complete 12 of those items. You see those check marked next to those categories. Two of the most recent projects include the Pistol Range Stormwater Pump Station and the V Street Drainage Project. And I'll come back to those items in a bit. But a couple of key things to point out here, since the report was prepared 3 years ago, is the urgency for drainage improvements became clear with this year's incredible rainfall. Not just the amounts of the rain, but the intensity at which it fell. Another point is how inflation has caused costs to go up dramatically, which emphasizes the need to really get moving along on some of these projects. Going back to the Pistol Range project, that was a $1.7 million project at its final cost, but was estimated at just over $900,000. The V Street Drainage Project was just over $3 million, which is almost twice as what was estimated back in 2020. The yellow row here is called part circle culverts. It's an important part of this particular stormwater master plan. This map shows 71 different locations at which these half-pipe culverts exist. And what they do is they convey water under an intersection and get it to a curb and gutter system, which gets it to convey. So there's no piping system other than a half pipe under the road. It all stays essentially on the surface. Most of these are decades old, although a few have been rehabilitated. They have a very small inlet opening, which restricts the amount of stormwater that can enter or exit, and they clog frequently, which makes them very maintenance intensive. They also can be a source of trips and falls and a bicycle hazard as well. So this replacement of these half-pipe culverts is part of this master plan. And that master plan cost estimate in 2020 was about $4 million. So now I want to focus in on 20th, 21st, and P Street. The yellow circles on this slide represent where those half-pipe culverts exist at those intersections. On April 21st, a conditional approval was issued to Sage Equities for a 40-unit multi-family apartment complex at 910 20th Street. The property is about 3/4 of an acre in size. There are 3 standard public works conditions that are governed by section 12.36.010 and are first, submitting a grading plan for all disturbed areas, both public and private property, retaining stormwater on the site, and that's important because it helps clean the stormwater before it's discharged out to the canal. And number 3, to reconstruct or repair substandard off-site improvements that front the project. And this is typically associated with driveways, curb and gutter, sidewalk, ADA, and connecting pavement. The stormwater system upgrades are not a requirement of the redevelopment areas. So in December 2021, the developer met with Public Works staff to discuss the timing of needed stormwater improvements contained within the master plan, with the hope of having this location completed prior to the housing project. The department's focus at that time was delivering a very long list of capital improvement projects, which included projects within the stormwater master plan, and specifically the V Street drainage project. At that time, we talked about considerable value in coordinating, avoiding the demolition of new sidewalk and curb and gutter and irrigation system and landscaping that would be placed in by the property owner. The city in 2 to 4 years would come back and deconstruct that for replacing the half-pipe culverts with a stormwater system. That would be twice the amount of construction. There is opportunity to minimize construction disruption to the community. And also, if this project could be accelerated, it could be accelerated sooner to take advantage of some of the current pricing of today's market rather than programming it into the future at a probably higher cost to the city. So an option that was tabled was one where the developer's engineer would design a stormwater improvement and prepare bid documents at their cost and risk. And then the Public Works Department would advertise to find out what the cost of that project would be, and then deliver it to City Council for consideration. And after considering the merits of the project and the available funding that exists, City Council may either approve the project, moving it forward in advance of when Public Works could move it forward, or to table it and shelve the design and do it later at a later point in time. So I wanted to back up to this. This particular slide shows the scope of work. It shows new stormwater pipe running down P Street. The shaded area is actually the area of work for the proposed construction project that's being presented to you today. So subsequent to the December meeting, the developer's engineer worked on this particular grading plan and the off-site stormwater improvements with the master plan's goals in mind. Public Works reviewed and conditionally approved the design improvements in July of 2022 and received the biddable plans back in February. I wanted to also point out the green that you see here is what the developer continues to be responsible for. There are 2 driveways constructed at each end of the alley, 316 linear feet curb and gutter, mainly along 20th and 21st Street, 2 sets of ADA ramps, 1,775 square feet of sidewalk reconstruction, and of course the landscaping and irrigation system improvements. But I do want to be perfectly clear, the curb and gutter along P Street would normally be constructed by the developer, but has been included in this project because it is within the demolition area for placing that pipe in the ground. In terms of the recommendation for moving forward, I did want to talk a little bit about the bids that we received. We received 2 bids, and they were both within 10%, so we feel very comfortable that that's a very competitive number to do the construction work. The funding source for this particular project would be through ARPA funds, which have a timetable associated with spending those dollars. And it would enable the department to continue to work on the priorities for the master plan without further delay of those priorities. So staff does recommend receive and file of the staff report, accepting the bid and approving a contract with Kern Pacific Construction in the amount of $721,048.18 with a $50,000 city-controlled contingency for unforeseen conditions that would occur during construction, and we tend to see those as we excavate the road with underground utilities. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Strakos. Mr. Clegg, anything further before we go back to council?
Just a final summarization. Again, these are improvements that have planned in our long-range stormwater management plan for downtown. This is work that we would do at some point. We just saw an opportunity to take advantage of construction that was occurring in this area, and the other 71, well, not 71, the other 67 locations where we have these half pipes, we will go in and do these repairs in those areas as well. And if we see other developments that come forward in the near future, we would treat those the same way, where we'll take advantage of opportunities to not have to reconstruct or deconstruct and get synergies off of the development that may occur in the downtown core.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the Public Works Department, to staff for all the work on the storm drain improvements, the 2020 master plan for storm drainage. I think is necessary and required if we're serious about redevelopment, frankly. It is important for us to continue to promote infill and to see the revitalization of downtown, but we have to have the basic infrastructure to support it. And the fact that we have made the investment in our storm drain plan and our sewer plan, and now know what the infrastructure looks like, know where those areas are for improvement, is a good step in the right direction. And my hope is that we continue to address all of these things as quickly as possible. These part circle culverts are a pain in my side because when we see huge storms in downtown, we see significant flooding, and there are many, many residents and constituents that love to complain, and rightfully so. I mean, it is a huge issue and a threat to their property and many of their assets. And so it's important for us to get it right and to address these issues longer term. I mean, V Street, 17th and O, H and 19, Truxton and Oak. Poor Mr. Jenks at Jenks Tires on 21st Street has been dealing with drainage issues in this area for decades. So now that we're able to address these issues, I think it's a positive thing. I think the public should know, while we're all nestled in our warm homes when it's cold and rainy, there are men and women of our streets division who are out there pumping these drainage systems and trying to address these flooding areas, and they do an incredible job. But I think that we need to really address this infrastructure all throughout downtown, and we'll do it in a systematic way. And I support this project. I think it's absolutely necessary for us for, again, the future revitalization of downtown. And I'm going to move staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. Christian, you and I had a talk about this afternoon. I've read through it, tried to understand it the best I can. But no matter what, this doesn't seem to meet the smell test to me. And maybe we could enter back into that conversation again just a little bit, because, or maybe staff, when it comes back with a project like this, maybe we can approach it just a little bit different so it can meet the smell test. And I'd like for you to make a comment on this particular project. Not about the whole area, just for this particular project.
Councilmember and Mayor and Council, I think where you're referring to, Councilmember Weir, is that we acknowledge and recognize that there is a particular developer that is adjacent to this project, that they would, be required to make construction at least of sidewalk in this area, as many of the other conditions, as the Public Works Director noted on the slide that had the green shaded areas that have to be developed. But this is in the, and I know you referenced the specific project versus the big picture, but in the big picture, if another development had come up, let's say 4 blocks away, different project, different developer, we would approach it the same way in considering what are our long-term plans and doing work that is planned. At the same time, other construction is happening, so we're not cutting roadways or taking sidewalks apart or ripping up, freshly, laid concrete for sidewalks. And so understand and recognize that there is a particular developer, particular development here, but this is how we're going to be approaching projects throughout the downtown as we try and address the storm drainage throughout that area, because we've identified where the improvements need to take place.
And so if we have another situation like this, is there a better way to present that to the council? Because it just really, it doesn't pass the smell test. And there's a reason for it, but, and I don't expect everybody to change everything they're doing, but maybe it could be presented to us in a little bit better light.
I've given this some thought as well, and we are talking to other property owners who want to do some redevelopment along the corridor in areas where we will be working. And in this case, the developer took a risk to invest some funding into a design at their cost and risk. And City Council has the option to shelve that design and use it at some point into the future or apply it today. I think before a developer takes that risk, maybe bringing this concept to City Council for approval early in the process, in terms of giving the developers some understanding that if they do take this risk to invest in a design, that the city may come back and approve this construction component as part of it. That may be an option.
And let me come back to Councilmember. It took me a minute, but I think I better understand your suggestion and your point. So we did have a conversation about just this overall storm water, plan for downtown, and said, could we bring forward in broader geographies several improvements that don't necessarily tie to 1 or 2 specific blocks or 1 or 2 specific projects. Let's see if we can take a grid and chunk several of these together, because I think that does have more clarity of how that ties to the bigger picture and has I think a better understanding of what we're really trying to do. I think out of an abundance of transparency, we wanted to be clear about what this project is and isn't, and also where it does tie to the bigger picture. But understand your point that we can, I think, also do better about how we find opportunities to do this leveraging of other work that's happening while making it more about the bigger picture.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm encouraged to see stormwater improvement within the city. As I joined the city council, it kind of coincided with unprecedented rain, as you've shared today. And so I received tons of unexpected calls, especially in newer Ward 7, where some of this is surprising to see, having stormwater issues. So I'm encouraged to see this start of this happen in downtown. It is a reality of our city, of any city, that wherever the infrastructure is older, there is a need for improvement. And I also want to just put my urban planning just 2 cents in there of, exploring things like bioswales and different things that also are accomplish both stormwater retention as well as an aesthetic of a city, and where we're able to do that. And especially in a downtown that as a tourist attraction, I think we would really benefit from something of that sort. Maybe that doesn't fit into here, but I was thinking about that as we're having this discussion. My second point is, I know we've started in the downtown area, and I'm encouraged by it again to see stormwater improvement. I see the same thing kind of in older Ward 7, but also I've added to the vice mayor's to-do list when suggestions come to me in other wards. And a trucking company actually had reached out to me, and their home base is off of Union. They're on 300 Terrace Way, and during the incredibly heavy rainfall, they had water up to their knees on this roadway, and it creates a safety hazard for both their 18-wheelers, but also the Bakersfield City School District bus yard that's right adjacent to them, and a number of other things. So, even in my own kind of experience so far, I've seen within this ward, as well as in the wards that have older infrastructure, this need for improving the stormwater infrastructure and our drainage. So just wanted to share that I'm encouraged to see this, and kind of look forward to seeing more happen, and this kind of being what sets the precedent for stormwater improvement to come in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaur. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to circle back with Councilmember Weir's comment in terms of the smell test. Just kind of get us clarity on what exactly you mean by that. Councilmember Weir.
I mean that we have a council member involved in this, and that when staff brings things to us, it should, we should at least be advised that this is happening, and why it's happening, and what we're going to do, because otherwise it just comes, it falls into the agenda, and not everybody understands what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I do now, but not everybody understands that. So I think staff needs to, if we have a situation like that, they need to make sure that it's well advertised and everybody knows about it.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. I just want to reiterate, this is part of our larger storm drain improvement plan that actually came to council and for adoption, correct? And is something that we agreed as a council and along with city leadership that we would work through systematically. So from my perspective, the question is not if we were going to make these improvements in this particular area, it's when. It's when. And I think it's far better, I think all of us would agree, I hope, it's far better and smarter and more reasonable to do the work and make those improvements prior to development than after. We see the implications. It frustrates me more than anything, side note, when we look at Chester Avenue that we just repaved, and then we have Cal Water coming in and tearing up the roadway that we just repaved. It's so disrespectful to all of us taxpayers, the fact that we waste so much money and so many resources, tearing up a roadway we had just improved. And so I think, it's actually very strategic and smart of us, I believe, to do this work prior to development than for us to wait later down the road. So I hope that in the future, we're actually being really strategic and working with developers, no matter who they are, and being strategic and looking for ways for us to advance work, advance improvements prior to development so that we don't find ourselves being so wasteful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a slightly different tenor to my comments tonight. I'm just really grateful to staff. On the V Street project, we had pushed really hard to make those improvements. There were days where that particular community, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I suppose if you put your foot down in the puddles of water, you'd probably be knee deep, if not a little bit over. And it was particularly troubling because in that particular community, we have a lot of bicyclists, people who are walking down the street. To get there's a commercial development around the corner, and a lot of people bike to it, and just want to say thank you. Thank you for being proactive on this, and this is a testament that these not so sexy investments, investments in infrastructure and stormwater drainage and sewer, that they can truly transform a community, and it makes a huge impact. And so I want that benefit for Ward 1 residents. I also want that benefit for downtown businesses and residents there as well. And so with that, I'm fully in support of this effort today.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. I don't see any other requests to speak. You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Weir voting no and Councilmember Smith abstaining.
Thank you. And now, next item, please.
Council and Mayor statements.
Councilmember Weir.
Thanks, Mayor and Vice Mayor. I do not want to step on your toes, but I drive down Chester a lot. And the street repairs Cal Water made are just horrible. If you go across 21st Street, you actually literally have to drive around the pothole out there. So I'm bringing this up to you, so hopefully you can do something about that.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a referral tonight to Mr. Strackloos and the Public Works Department that we not only look at a strategy to go ahead and repave Chester, but also let's send a message to all of our utilities and again, reiterate how we want to better plan ahead because I think we need to my comment earlier, really be far more coordinated. I know there's been a lot of good work to improve coordination in the past, but I think there's still work to be done. And I think it is, as I mentioned, a disrespect to us taxpayers when we see good work go torn up and then repaved and done halfway. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, Mayor. So the work is temporary patchwork. We're watching them very closely, and we're going to make sure that it's restored much better than what you see out there today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas.
Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Mayor. Today my comments are to uplift the voices of Ward 7 residents who have reached out to me on multiple platforms in multiple ways, speaking with residents in person as well. There is a ever-present and growing concern about safety in Ward 7 in regards to speeding, street racing, and just reckless driving. I want to read a snippet of a letter that I received from a resident of Ward 7. Dear Councilwoman Kaur, I hope this letter finds you well. Please allow me to get to the point. I am very concerned about the safety of our citizens on our city streets, primarily traffic within the city of Bakersfield. Street racing, unlawful and unregistered vehicles, loud and modified vehicles traveling on our streets at high rates of speed are all contributing to a sense of lawlessness in our community. Recent deaths due to street racing and bad behaviors include Maria Vianney Navarro, killed on November 24th, 2019. Bianca Flores, killed on February 2nd, 2022. Gayla Price, killed on April 18th, 2023. All involved street racing. The letter goes on to have many detailed suggestions and approaches. I want to read a snippet of a message I received from another resident in which she highlights something that I have been thinking about endlessly, in which right down the road from an elementary school, a 3-year-old little girl lost her life due to a woman or another driver missing a stop sign. This resident is very concerned about speeding and just what seems as though a lack of action or response in terms of the many deaths that are being seen. And it seems as though there is in the news every day a new death that has to do with speeding or a car-related death. My motive for speaking today is not to place blame. It's really just to uplift the voices of the residents because I have received an alarming amount of messages in this context. We will be having community meetings soon, resident meetings, especially in response to some of the more recent incidences that have happened within Ward 7. And, you know, the residents want to launch a campaign dubbed No More Car Deaths within the city, within Ward 7 especially. And so I wanted to at least give kind of, preview of what's to come, some of the conversations to come, some of the actions to come, and also that this is something that the community residents are inspired to work on. And I will be working with them and bringing some of those suggestions forward and continuing to uplift some of those voices. And I know this intersects with our built environment, with traffic safety, with individual choices of speeding, and just the recreation around street racing. So we plan on addressing a lot of those things and having conversations about that. But today I just wanted to take a moment to uplift the voices of very concerned residents. And with that, I close my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaur. I don't see any other requests to speak. Today is National Flag Day. We are blessed to live in a community that values the foundational values of our country, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to Greenlawn Southwest for retiring more than 3,200 flags today in a ceremony, those that had been tattered and torn and appropriately retired. So thank you, and with that, we stand adjourned at 7:32.